Hello students, welcome to this online class and thank you for watching my videos enough and please like, do share and subscribe must for new upcoming videos. So now we are discussing the neuroanatomy videos. These videos are very helpful when you go to clinicals or when you attempt the practical examinations especially. This is not only for MBBS students, it is also for all medical students. Okay, now coming to this, the sulci gyri on the medial surface of the cerebrum. Sulci gyri of the medial surface of the cerebrum. Before going to see this sulci and gyri, we need to identify what are the structures exactly present at the medial surface of the cerebrum. So for in the superolateral surface, we have seen this central sulcus of Rolando we have seen, then the lateral sulcus or Sylvian fissure we have seen, then precentral sulcus, postcentral sulcus, then other sulcus and gyri also we have seen, frontal, superior frontal, middle frontal and inferior frontal gyrus. These structures we have seen. Now coming to this, the medial surface of the cerebrum. Just moving to the medial surface of cerebrum. So medial surface of the cerebrum we can identify. First, the commissural fibers we can identify. The commissural fibers. Excuse me. Now coming to see the medial surface. To see the medial surface, where it is exactly present is, it is present just below the superior medial border. Yes, here you can identify. Yes. In this picture you can identify superior medial border over here, and just towards medial you can identify entire this is the medial surface, and here you can identify the inferior border. So this is the medial surface. On the medial surface we can identify we can identify so the tracks of tracks or the fibers, the axons of the neurons, they are extending and joining with the opposite side cerebrum. So here we are just seeing the right half of the cerebral hemisphere and the fibers which are connecting with each other. So from one particular part of the gyri, one particular part of the cortex, it is going to join with the opposite side at the similar part of the cortex called as commissural fibers. So briefly we have discussed commissural fibers, projection fibers and association fibers. So this corpus callosum, it is consisting of commissural fibers. Now let me explain you this. What is this corpus callosum? So in this flat medial surface, how can we get this medial surface is, if we take a section, median sagittal section, we can identify two symmetrical halves. In one symmetrical half, in both symmetrical halves, we can identify the same structures. Now coming to this corpus callosum, it is a white matter, it is an arched band. It presents a conspicuous arched band of white matter which we can identify. This is called as corpus callosum. So it is composed of largest collection of commissural fibers. The corpus callosum presents from behind forwards. One is splenium, then trunk or it is also called as body. Then you can identify the genu, and here you can identify the rostrum. Okay, let me show you this. Yes, here you can identify. So here we are just looking from posterior to anterior. Splenium over here, then this is the trunk, and here you can identify the genu, and this part is the rostrum. So these are the parts of corpus callosum. So what is corpus callosum? So it is a arched fibers, arched white matter. So what are the structures are present in this? Commissural fibers are present in the corpus callosum. Okay, so the rostrum part recurves backward from the genu and is continuous with the upper end of lamina terminalis. So this part is called as lamina terminalis. This rostrum part is curved behind forwards. Okay, it is curved and then it is joining with the continuous with the lamina terminalis. You remember these terms. These are very, very, very important terms what I am uttering now. So whenever you are studying any neuroanatomy, you must identify, you must know the parts of each and every part of the cerebrum, cerebellum, medulla oblongata, every part. At least you would have listened that word. Okay, so remember these parts of the corpus callosum: splenium, trunk or body, then genu, then the rostrum. Rostrum is continuous as the lamina terminalis. So that is the parts of the corpus callosum. Then in front of the, let me show you this. Yes, coming to this, excuse me. So coming to the in front of lamina terminalis, you can identify small narrow part over here. This narrow part is called as paraterminal gyrus. This narrow part is called as paraterminal gyrus, which is it is continuous with the diagonal band of Broca and with the medial olfactory area, medial olfactory striae. You remember this medial olfactory striae word. I will show you this medial olfactory striae at the inferior surface of the cerebrum. Okay, inferior surface of the cerebrum. So just remember this area is called as paraterminal gyrus. Then in front of the paraterminal gyrus, you can identify a sulcus, small sulcus. This sulcus is called as posterior posterior olfactory sulcus, posterior olfactory para olfactory sulcus, posterior para olfactory sulcus. In front of the posterior para olfactory sulcus, we can identify anterior para olfactory sulcus. So between anterior and the posterior para olfactory sulcus, the projection is called as para olfactory gyrus. So here is paraterminal gyrus. In front of the paraterminal gyrus, you can identify posterior para olfactory sulcus. Then in front of the posterior para olfactory sulcus, you can identify para olfactory gyrus. So here you can identify anterior para olfactory sulcus. Okay, so these structures you have to remember. Then we are just moving forwards and try to identify the sulci which are present at the medial surface. So coming to the medial surface of the cerebrum, we can identify a sulcus called as cingulate sulcus. Let me show you this. Try to observe the diagram. You can identify a brown line which is extending. That is nothing but the cingulate sulcus. Cingulate sulcus. It is the most important prominent sulcus. Prominent sulcus which follows a course, curved course about 1 centimeter above and parallel to the upper convex margin of corpus callosum. So just above the corpus callosum, we can identify a parallel curved sulcus called as cingulate sulcus. Okay, this cingulate sulcus. Anteriorly, it ends below the genu. It ends below the genu of corpus callosum. Posteriorly, it turns upwards to reach the superior-medial border of the hemisphere. It is extending upwards and reaching to the superior-medial border of the cerebral hemisphere, a little behind the upper end of central sulcus. A little behind the upper end of the central sulcus. So central sulcus, if you just revise the central sulcus, it is extending from the medial surface, central sulcus of Rolando. So behind the central sulcus of Rolando, we can identify the posterior end of the cingulate sulcus is present. So the area between cingulate sulcus and the corpus callosum is termed as the cingulate gyrus. Okay. Yes, in this image, I just want to show you clearly all the sulci and gyri. Okay, this brown color line, this is called as cingulate sulcus. Just between the corpus callosum and the cingulate sulcus, entire this pale orange color structure, this is nothing but cingulate gyrus. Cingulate gyrus. Okay, so this area already have discussed, that is para terminal gyrus. Then you can identify para olfactory gyrus. Okay, then this is here I'm just want to show you the cingulate sulcus over here. This brown color line is nothing but cingulate sulcus. The next one is a callosal sulcus. Callosal sulcus, it separates the cingulate sulcus from the corpus callosum. It is this blue color one I'm just showing you. This is nothing but the callosal sulcus. So the callosal sulcus is separating the corpus callosum and the cingulate gyrus. Cingulate gyrus. The part of the medial surface between cingulate sulcus and the superomedial border of the hemisphere is divided by a short offshoot sulcus ascending from the cingulate sulcus above the middle of the trunk of the corpus callosum into two parts. So here I just want to show you this. Above the cingulate sulcus, we can identify the two areas. So one, the posterior end which is extending upwards and reaching to the superomedial border just behind the central sulcus. Around this area is called as paracentral lobule. Paracentral lobule. And then anterior to this one, anterior to this and above the cingulate sulcus, this green color one, this area is called as medial frontal gyrus. Medial frontal gyrus. So these are the structures you have to remember. Okay, these are the structures to remember once again. So what we have seen, the cingulate sulcus we have seen, then para olfactory area, then we have seen the cingulate gyrus we have seen, cingulate gyrus, paracentral lobule. Then you can identify the medial frontal gyrus. So this cingulate gyrus, if you just trace the cingulate gyrus posteriorly, this cingulate gyrus, it is extending posteriorly and it is continuous with the parahippocampal gyrus. Parahippocampal gyrus. Let me show you other diagram. Yes, here you can identify. So this cingulate gyrus extending posteriorly and crosses and extending as it is continuing as the parahippocampal gyrus. Parahippocampal gyrus. So here you can identify the gray matter. So here you can see the narrow band of cortex. Narrow band of cortex. This part is called as isthmus. This part is called as isthmus. So that is the structures we have seen. One, the cingulate gyrus we have seen, medial frontal gyrus, paracentral lobule we have seen. Then other sulci and gyri, what we can identify are, one is the posterior part of the medial surface. So we have seen anterior part we have discussed. Now moving posteriorly, what we can identify are posterior part of the medial surface behind the paracentral lobule. It has two main sulci. One is calcarine sulci. One is here you can identify the Calcarine Sulcus and Parieto-occipital sulcus. This red color one is nothing but Parieto-occipital sulcus, and this arched sulcus, this one is called as Calcarine sulcus. Calcarine sulcus. So between the Calcarine sulcus and the Parieto-occipital sulcus, these two sulci, they are joining with each other, and here you can identify the triangular area. This area is called as cuneus. Cuneus. In front of this triangular area, behind the paracentral lobule, this area above this cingulate gyrus, this quadrangular area, this area is called as precuneus. Precuneus. That is about the posterior part, what we can identify at the medial surface of the cerebrum. Medial surface of the cerebrum. Then other structures what we can identify are other structures which we can identify are at the temporal lobe. At the temporal lobe, excuse me. Yes, here you can identify. On the temporal lobe, we can identify one is superiorly we can identify another sulcus called as rhinal sulcus. Just below this one, we can identify occipitotemporal sulcus. Occipitotemporal sulcus. So these two sulci, they are dividing the temporal lobe into three areas. One is this area is called as parahippocampal gyrus, middle temporal gyrus, and inferior temporal gyrus. Inferior temporal gyrus. So these are the structures you have to remember. Then other sulci which we can identify most posteriorly is called as the lingual gyrus. So the calcarine sulcus, which is extending posteriorly, it is extending as the lingual gyrus. Okay, lingual gyrus. So these are the sulci and gyri which we can identify on the medial surface of the cerebrum. Then coming to the inferior surface of the cerebrum. Inferior surface, what we can identify are. So At the inferior surface, we can identify it is divided by a stem of lateral sulcus into two areas. Here you can identify the lateral sulcus. This lateral sulcus is dividing the inferior surface into two areas. Anteriorly, it is called as orbital surface. Posteriorly, we can identify the tentorial surface. Tentorial surface. So, coming to this, the stem of the lateral sulcus. Here we just identifying the stem of the lateral sulcus. The stem of the lateral sulcus commences from a depression known as anterior perforated substance. I'm just showing you with this red color arrow. This is nothing but anterior perforated substance which is bound in front by olfactory trigone. Olfactory trigone. So this trigone is formed by the divergence of medial and lateral olfactory striae. Medial and lateral olfactory striae. So what we have discussed in our previous medial surface is the para-terminal gyrus, and we have seen the para-olfactory gyrus. So coming to this, the continuation of the Carcass Corrosion, which is extending downwards, and here thereafter we have seen the genu, then you can see the rostrum. Rostrum, it is continuous downwards and it is joining with the medial olfactory linea terminalis, then linea terminalis extending as the medial olfactory striae. Now we are seeing this medial and lateral olfactory striae. Here you can identify the two divergence. So this is medial olfactory striae and this one is lateral olfactory striae. Okay, so then medial to this olfactory striae, what we can identify is optic chiasma. We can identify optic chiasma, and posterolaterally, yes, here you can see this is the posterolaterally by the uncus of the temporal lobe. This part is the uncus of temporal lobe. Uncus of temporal lobe. The area is pierced by the central branches of middle cerebral artery. That's why this area is called as anterior perforated substance. Then the orbital surface is slightly concave and formed by the lower surface of the frontal lobe. An olfactory sulcus, here you can identify a sulcus called as olfactory sulcus extending antero-posteriorly close to the medial frontal margin and enlarges the olfactory bulb, okay, and its track. The track reaches the anterior perforated substance and diverges into medial and lateral olfactory striae. Okay, the elongated area medial to the olfactory sulcus is called as gyrus rectus. This part is called as gyrus rectus. Understood? Medial to this olfactory tract, that gyrus is called as gyrus rectus. The rest of the orbital surface is divided into H-shaped sulcus. So we can identify a H-shaped sulcus. This sulcus is dividing the orbital surface into four areas. Four areas for orbital gyrus: anterior, posterior, medial, and lateral. Okay. So rest of the things we'll see in the next class. Thank you.